Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. All right, so before I start off on the main subject here today, I want to say something to avoid any claims of hypocrisy here. I do want listeners to notice that while I greatly appreciate any donations to the channel, I do not offer special treatment to donors over those who do not donate. Many progressive outlets do give special treatment to donors. You hear it all the time. Thank you for donating X dollars or X dollars on the super chat. Money does not impact how relevant a person's words are to me. My goal is the message, not satisfying my own ego or my income. I could probably focus more on my income and probably wouldn't hurt, but I'm not going to go about it that way. I admit that these other channels do make far more money than I do, which is why I'm still working full-time and do my writing and my videos on my own time. Yet my values are something that I stand by, even when they are inconvenient. All right, now on to the main subject. I have made previous videos stating that corporate lobbying should be made into a criminal offense. However, those videos were always geared in a political and human rights direction. This time I'm taking it in a different direction and focusing on the economic side. One thing to understand is that some countries already treat lobbying as a criminal offense to varying degrees. They may not impose prison time for lobbyists and lobbied officials, but there are definite prices to pay. Those countries view lobbying as exactly what it is: legalized bribery, unethical and unacceptable. I'm not going to claim all lobbying involves business dealings. However, there is often an overlap where the dealings are not purely business or humanitarian or whatever they claim to be. In all cases, it involves finance and economic elements. Consider AIPAC and their influence on the U.S. government. This relationship between the lobbying arm of the Israeli government and our own government moves in many directions, involving massive campaign donations, arms sales, business arrangements, corporate agreements, and of course, economic aid to Israel from the U.S. government at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer. Lots of people are profiting from these arrangements, but it's not the U.S. taxpayers. In my video on selling fear, I explained how military contractors donate large sums to political campaigns. The same companies use funds obtained through government contracts to advertise and gain influence with corporate media. The corporate media wants to capitalize on and expand the profits from these arrangements, so they use military contracts and paid retired military officials to convince the U.S. public that there is a threat which must be dealt with militarily. Enter the political contender the contractors donate to. Now the political contender claims there is indeed a threat, but they will keep you safe from that threat. How? By expanding military spending, which means larger sums paid to, you guessed it, military contractors. The contractors use part of that money to buy more advertising on corporate media and donate more money to political campaigns. Lather, rinse, repeat, murder. While they convince you that you are not now safe and never will be. If we will never be safe, then why are we spending all this money? If all that military spending was worth anything, Why did we leave Afghanistan in disgrace after 20 years? In 2001, the threat was allegedly from a fringe group in Afghanistan. Today, we are threatened by the Taliban, the same fringe group, plus ISIL, Syria, Iran, Somalia, Russia, China, Venezuela, Pakistan, Palestine, and on and on and on. Of course, it is not just military spending, which is affected by lobbying. Estimates say there are over 200 lobbyists in D.C. for every single member of Congress. These lobbyists span industries, and many are specific to individual corporations. Not all lobbyists are corporate. Some have a focus on social issues. However, even those lobbying groups often have some form of corporate backing, making the issue more complex. For now, I focus only on corporate and industry lobbying. Some examples of lobbying groups, aside from defense contractors, are corporate prison systems, oil, gas, coal, insurance, food service industry groups, shipping companies, corporate media, like they need it, telecommunications companies, including Facebook, Google, Time Warner, cell phone giants, and others, the advertising industry, the ethanol industry, the dairy industries, airlines, Amtrak, courier companies like UPS, FedEx, and many, many others. One thing to note is how many of these companies and industries also have contracts with the federal government, meaning, as with military contractors, they use taxpayer money to lobby elected officials for more contracts and more legislation beneficial to them while harmful to the general population. The effect of all these lobbyists has been that the industries and corporations literally write legislation. Most of this legislation is written by ALEC, A-L-E-C, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a cooperative lobbying entity that spans different industries and has written many thousands of pieces of legislation, which lawmakers, often sign or frequently, they often sign or submit as bills for passage, word for word as written by ALEC. A few years ago, ALEC was spoken of frequently by leftist media. Today it is a name which is largely forgotten by the public because it is not spoken of by the media at all. Yet it is still just as active, just as powerful, if not even more so. The fact that they operate openly, yet in the shadows, is very telling. Lobbying groups work diligently and effectively to suppress wage growth and reduce regulations which protect workers' rights, human rights, the environment, and control inflation. They also work to privatize many government social support programs. One of their most despicable achievements was the partial privatization of Medicare and Medicaid under George W. Bush, which led to Medicare Part B, C, D, etc. What was once a highly successful and effective, fully government-run program, which provided medical care to elderly and disabled Americans, became a profit vehicle for corporations. Yet they are not happy with only partial privatization. They are still trying very hard to lobby for the privatization of the rest of these programs, no matter what the tragic human cost may be. While capitalists think privatizing everything is a good idea, I have outlined in the past how many millions of jobs and systems in this country rely heavily, even exclusively, on a socialist model. Every single government occupation in this country is socialist in nature. Whether speaking of the president, a military member, a dog catcher, school janitor, teacher, road repair crews, police, firefighters, forest rangers, and on through the list. These jobs pose no direct profit model and hence have no capitalist equivalency. I cannot count how many debates I have had with capitalists, especially libertarians, where I have challenged them to offer a capitalist model to perform these very necessary occupations, and they failed 100% of the time. They always fall back on ideology and meaningless buzzwords with no substance. If these occupations were eliminated, the entire economy would collapse within days. If they were privatized, only the wealthy would have access to some of the services provided by these occupations, and even they would no longer have access to all of them because some of the occupations simply would no longer exist. It is extremely ironic that these groups which suppress wages do not have the insight to realize that while they may gain more profits at the very top of the chain in the short term, they destroy the economy, which makes any profit even possible. As consumers have less money to spend, there is less opportunity for any profit at all to be made. Even if their goal is power, they basically only have power over workers. As we see fewer and fewer workers in the labor force, even their power becomes reduced. This has become evident in the past year as fewer and fewer workers are finding their own exploitation to be acceptable at any level. More workers have been dropping out of the labor force than in 50 years. The birth rate has declined drastically. More families are cohabiting than ever. Huge numbers of millennials are ride-sharing, taking public transportation, or riding bicycles rather than buying vehicles. More people are growing gardens and recycling clothing, all of which goes into reducing spending on new products made by corporate entities and allow less opportunity for exploitation by those corporate entities. When we hear about consumer spending, what we hear about is how much money is being spent. This does not in any way equate to volume of products being sold. As prices continue to rise, even as the number of dollars being spent may remain constant or even increase, it does not translate into more product being produced or sold, which is on the decline. This translates into fewer workers being needed, meaning fewer consumers with disposable income. Once consumers learn to live with fewer luxuries and feel the need for more security than worthless plastic garbage, it becomes a lot more difficult to convince them to buy more plastic garbage. When people find themselves healthier, happier, and more financially secure by cooking and eating at home, they are less likely to buy fast food or go to restaurants. None of this means that lobbyists will stop lobbying. If anything, we are likely to see an increase in lobbying as we have seen in red states that lobbied officials to end the federal unemployment subsidies early, which had little to no effect in forcing low-wage workers back into minimum wage jobs. All that happened was a further reduction in consumer spending and wages being forced higher. Win for us, lose for the corporations, while they still saddle themselves with more debt from paying for lobbying. As wages do increase, there is the possibility of consumer spending rising again, though it will be less than for many years than it had been, as the past 18 months have left emotional scars and apprehensions which will not abate soon. We can expect people to be saving more and spending less disposable income for a long, long time. However, before any kind of recovery does come to pass, we have to organize and fight against the power of lobbyists and their influence on our government, or we will be even worse off in the future. Like I said, lobbyists have not stopped lobbying during the past 18 months, and they will be lobbying even more adamantly as they try to recoup losses incurred during the pandemic. Should they accomplish that goal, it will not stop money and power or addictive drugs to capitalists, and they will never stop needing their next fix. Like most addicts, they do not care what harm their addiction does to those around them or even themselves. So the best route that we have is to increase our efforts to fight for federally funded election campaigns from bottom to top. Make all private campaign donations illegal. Money is not freedom of speech. It detracts from freedom of speech. When the wealthy are the only voices being heard by elected officials, this is a fact which cannot be denied. In addition, all lobbying by those who stand to make monetary profits should be made a criminal offense with mandatory prison sentencing. This would lead to a more stable economy as more elected officials are able to take office that represent the people rather than corporations. It would improve business competition as the mega corporations are no longer able to buy legislation which offers them an advantage over smaller businesses. When we discuss increasing taxes on the wealthy and corporations, their voices would carry no more weight than the general population. Monopolization may not be a thing of the past, but it would be far easier to combat against. Those who claim to be libertarians or free market capitalists should be well behind this concept, because lobbying is not only government intrusion, but it is anti-competitive. It is damaging not only to society, but to what these free market capitalists refer to as real capitalism. It harms small business owners and has driven millions of small businesses out of existence. Beware anyone who claims to be for small business, yet endorses systems which do extreme harm to the same small businesses. They are not who they claim to be, but opportunistic corporatists trying weakly to disguise themselves as something else. So, how about we get behind this one? Share this video. Talk about these subjects. Let's get behind breaking the corruption in this country, in our electoral system, in the running of our government. Let's start sending people to prison. How about it? All right. Again, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can, please donate $1 a month to help expand the channel. I'll catch you in the next one.